The manila envelope sat on the kitchen counter like a bomb waiting to detonate. Eliza Manning traced her finger along its edge, her wedding ring catching the afternoon light streaming through the bay window. For 20 minutes, she'd been standing there, perfectly still, listening to the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. 6 o'clock was approaching. Nathan would be home soon. She glanced at her phone again, checking the location tracker. The little blue dot that represented her husband's phone moved steadily along the highway. 18 minutes away. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she replayed the scene from earlier that day in her mind, frame by frame. Like a horror movie she couldn't stop watching. The silver Audi pulling into the motel parking lot. Nathan's familiar silhouette stepping out, checking his surroundings. The woman with copper hair meeting him at room 114. The way he kissed her before closing the door. 3 years of marriage, gone in an instant. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway jerked her back to the present. Her eyes darted to her phone. The tracker showed Nathan was still 15 minutes away, a neighbor perhaps. Or a delivery, not him. Not yet. Eliza took a deep breath and moved to the kitchen table where she'd arranged everything with surgical precision. The envelope containing the divorce papers, printed photos from today's surveillance, and a glass of whiskey, Nathan's favorite Macallan 18, which they'd been saving for their 5th anniversary. She picked up the glass, considering it for a moment before taking a long, burning sip. She wouldn't be needing it for celebrations anymore. The house was spotless. Dinner, salmon with roasted asparagus and fingerling potatoes, sat in the warming drawer. It would be their last meal together, though Nathan didn't know that yet. She wanted everything to be perfect when she destroyed their world. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. "On my way home, babe. Can't wait to see you." Eliza's hand trembled as she set the phone down without replying. 10 minutes later, she heard the familiar sound of his key in the lock. 6 months earlier, things had been different. Eliza remembered the exact moment when she first felt the shift in their marriage. It was subtle. The way Nathan started working later, how his phone would always be face down, the growing silences during dinner. At first, she blamed herself. Perhaps she wasn't attentive enough. Perhaps her focus on her career as an architectural designer had created distance between them. "I have a major project coming up," Nathan had announced one evening in March, his blue eyes avoiding hers as he pushed food around his plate. "The Parker development. I'll need to put in extra hours." Nathan was a commercial real estate developer, and the Parker project was supposedly his big break. Eliza had been supportive, of course. She'd packed his lunches, kept dinner warm when he came home late, and never complained when weekend plans were canceled for emergency meetings. "You seem distracted lately," her friend Mia had commented during their monthly lunch at Westfield Cafe. "Everything okay with you and Nathan?" "We're fine," Eliza had responded automatically. "Just busy, but they weren't fine." Eliza knew it deep down, even before she found the receipt for a women's bracelet she'd never received, tucked in Nathan's jacket pocket while doing laundry. It was dated 2 days after their anniversary, which he'd spent working late. She'd confronted him then, heart in her throat. It was supposed to be a surprise, Nathan had said, producing a small jewelry box from his desk drawer the next day. Inside was a silver bracelet with a small charm. I was waiting for the right moment. Eliza had wanted to believe him. The bracelet was beautiful and his explanation plausible. But something didn't feel right about the way his eyes shifted when he spoke, or how quickly he changed the subject. That night, while Nathan slept, she'd checked his phone for the first time in their relationship. There were no suspicious texts or calls, no hidden apps. Everything seemed normal. Too normal, perhaps. She'd felt ashamed of her suspicion and vowed to work harder on their marriage. For a while, things improved. They took a weekend trip to the coast, spent evenings cooking together, and even talked about starting a family. Nathan seemed more present, more like the man she'd fallen in love with 4 years ago when they'd met at a charity auction. He'd bid on a painting she'd donated, not because he liked art, but because he wanted her number. But then came the business trip to Chicago last month, the trip that didn't align with any meetings on his company calendar. which she occasionally checked when coordinating their schedules. The trip where he'd forgotten to send her photos of the amazing view from his hotel room, breaking their long-standing tradition. The trip after which he came home with a newfound preference for a cologne he'd never worn before. The Parker project is almost wrapped up, Nathan had mentioned casually over breakfast 2 weeks ago. Just a few more meetings to finalize the contracts. Eliza had nodded, sipping her coffee, watching him over the rim of her mug. That's great, honey. You've been working so hard. The hours should be better soon, he'd promised, squeezing her hand across the table. I know I've been absent lately. His words should have reassured her. Instead, they rang hollow. That evening, after Nathan left for what he claimed was a client dinner, Eliza had sat alone in their living room, staring at the wedding photo on the mantel. They looked so happy, so in love, Nathan's arms wrapped around her waist as they laughed at some forgotten joke. When had that changed? When had they become strangers sleeping side by side? The next morning, she'd made a decision. She installed a tracking app on his phone while he showered, syncing it with her own device. If he was telling the truth, she'd delete it and never mention it. If not, for a week, the blue dot of his location had matched his story. Office during the day, a client dinner at Fleming's Steakhouse, drinks with colleagues at the Capitol Bar. Eliza had begun to think she was being paranoid, that her insecurities were creating problems where none existed, until yesterday. I'll be in meetings all afternoon, Nathan had said, kissing her cheek before leaving for work. Don't wait up for dinner. At 2:37 p.m., the tracking app showed him leaving his office building. But instead of heading to another downtown location for a meeting, the blue dot moved toward the outskirts of the city, to an area Eliza didn't recognize. It stopped at what she later discovered was the Parkview Motel, where it remained for nearly 2 hours before returning downtown. That night, when Nathan came home smelling of mint gum and that new cologne, Eliza had smiled and asked about his day. Productive, he'd said, loosening his tie, finally making headway with the Parker investors. She'd watched him lie to her face, his expression completely natural, and something broke inside her. The man she loved, the man she'd planned to have children with, could look her in the eyes and lie without a moment's hesitation. Today, she'd decided to be certain. She'd called in sick to work, dressed in jeans and a baseball cap, and waited in her car a block from his office. When Nathan emerged at lunch and headed to his car, she followed at a safe distance. The Parkview Motel looked even seedier in daylight than it had appeared on Google Maps. Faded yellow paint peeled from the exterior walls, and the neon vacancy sign flickered pathetically despite the afternoon sun. It was the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour, that had seen countless affairs and broken promises within its thin walls. Eliza parked her Honda Civic at the far end of the lot, behind a delivery truck that provided decent cover. Her hands shook as she killed the engine. What was she doing? Following her husband like some deranged stalker? Part of her wanted to drive away, to pretend she'd never seen the tracking app, never found the bracelet receipt, never noticed the changes in the man she'd married. But she stayed, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. At 12:43 p.m., Nathan's silver Audi pulled into the lot. He parked near room 114, the same room from yesterday, and checked his watch. He looked different somehow, his movements lighter, more energetic than they were at home. He smoothed his hair in the reflection of his car window and straightened his tie before approaching the door. Eliza fumbled for her phone, opening the camera app. Through the viewfinder, she watched as Nathan knocked on the door of room 114. It opened almost immediately. The woman who appeared had shoulder-length copper hair and wore a fitted black dress that highlighted her curves. She was younger than Eliza, perhaps early 30s, and beautiful in a way that made Eliza's stomach clench. The woman smiled, a radiant, intimate smile, and reached for Nathan's face. Eliza snapped a photo as they kissed. Then another as Nathan's hand slipped around the woman's waist, pulling her close with a familiarity that spoke of many such meetings. A final photo as they disappeared inside, the door closing behind them. For several minutes, Eliza sat motionless, her phone clutched in her hand, staring at the closed door of room 114. She felt strangely calm, as if watching a movie about someone else's life. The pain would come later, she knew. Right now, there was only a hollow emptiness where her heart should be. She zoomed in on the last photo, studying the woman's face. Who was she? How long had this been going on? Did she know Nathan was married, or was she another victim of his lies? It didn't matter. None of it mattered anymore except the truth, the undeniable proof on her phone. Eliza started her car and drove directly to her lawyer's office. By 3:30 p.m., she had the divorce papers in hand. By 4:15 p.m., she was home, changing into the blue dress Nathan had always loved, arranging the evidence on the kitchen table, waiting for her husband to return from his afternoon of betrayal. "Honey, I'm home," Nathan called, his voice echoing through the foyer. The sound of his briefcase hitting the console table, keys jingling as they landed in the ceramic bowl Eliza had made in a pottery class last year. The familiar routine of his arrival was now a parody of their life together. "In the kitchen," Eliza replied, surprised by the steadiness of her voice. She stood with her back to the doorway, gazing out the window at their carefully landscaped backyard. The cherry tree they'd planted on their first anniversary was beginning to lose its leaves, golden and crimson confetti scattered across the lawn. She'd always loved fall, the transition, the letting go, the promise of renewal after a necessary death. "Something smells amazing," Nathan said as he entered, coming up behind her. His hands found her waist and she forced herself not to flinch. "You look beautiful." Eliza turned slowly, meeting his eyes. Nathan's smile faltered slightly as he registered her expression. "Everything okay?" he asked, his hands dropping to his sides. "I made your favorite," she said, gesturing toward the oven. "Salmon. And I opened the Macallan." Nathan's eyes moved to the glass on the counter, then to the manila envelope on the table, and finally to the stack of photos beside it. His face remained composed, but she saw the slight tightening around his mouth, the almost imperceptible narrowing of his eyes. "What's all this?" he asked, his voice casual, moving toward the table. "Why don't you have a seat, Nathan?" It wasn't a question. He hesitated, then pulled out a chair and sat down, reaching for the envelope. Eliza remained standing, watching as he slid out the documents and scanned the first page. She saw the moment comprehension dawned, saw the blood drain from his face. "Eliza," he began, looking up at her with wide eyes. "What is this?" "Divorce papers," she said calmly. "I think the heading makes that quite clear. But why?" "Look at the photos, Nathan." His gaze dropped to the stack of photos beside the envelope. With a trembling hand, he spread them out on the table. There he was, kissing the copper-haired woman. Entering room 114, the date and timestamp visible in the corner of each image. "I can explain," he said. "The classic line of cheaters throughout history. I'm sure you can." Eliza finally sat down across from him, folding her hands on the table. "You're very good at explanations. The bracelet. The late nights. The business trips. The Parker project." Nathan's face cycled through shock, shame, and calculation. She could almost see him formulating lies, excuses, ways to minimize what he'd done. "It's not what you think," he tried, pushing the photos away as if their mere proximity was offensive. "No?" Eliza raised an eyebrow. "You weren't at the Parkview Motel today at 12:43 p.m.? You didn't kiss that woman? You didn't spend 2 hours in room 114 with her? You didn't do the same thing yesterday afternoon when you were supposedly in meetings?" His silence was confirmation enough. "Who is she?" Eliza asked, surprised by her own curiosity. Nathan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Her name is Vanessa. She's a marketing consultant working on the Parker project." "And how long has this been going on?" He hesitated. 3 months. "Do you love her?" The question seemed to surprise him. I don't know. Maybe. It's complicated." "No, Nathan, it's actually very simple." Eliza's voice hardened. "You made vows to me. You promised honesty, loyalty, faithfulness, and then you lied to my face day after day." "It just happened," he said weakly. I never meant to hurt you. Eliza laughed, a hollow sound that seemed to echo in the kitchen. You never meant for me to find out. There's a difference. She stood up and walked to the counter, retrieving her glass of whiskey. The amber liquid caught the light as she swirled it gently. Did she know you were married? Eliza asked, taking a sip. Nathan nodded reluctantly. Yes, but I told her things between us were difficult. Were they? Eliza's voice was soft now. Because I thought we were happy. I thought we were planning a future together. Children. The house in Vermont we always talked about. We were, he said quickly. We are. Eliza, this doesn't have to end our marriage. People make mistakes. Couples recover from affairs all the time. Is that what you want? She asked, genuinely curious. To recover? Nathan looked at the divorce papers, then back at her. Of course. I love you, Eliza. What happened with Vanessa? It was a mistake. A stupid, selfish mistake. 3 months is not a mistake, Nathan. It's a choice. One you made every single day. He stood up, moving toward her, hands outstretched. Please, just give me a chance to make this right. I'll end it with her today. I'll go to counseling. Whatever you want. Eliza stepped back, maintaining the distance between them. That's the problem. I don't know what I want anymore. The man I married, the man I loved, I don't even know who he is now. I'm still me, Nathan insisted, his voice breaking. I'm still the guy who bid on your terrible painting just to get your number. I'm still the guy who proposed on the ferry, even though I was seasick. I'm still yours. For a moment, Eliza wavered. There was real pain in his eyes, real regret. The memories he evoked, the auction, the proposal, tugged at something deep inside her. Maybe he was right. Maybe people did recover from affairs. Maybe they could find their way back to each other. But then she remembered the tracking app, the hours she'd spent following him, the sick feeling in her stomach as she watched him kiss another woman. She remembered the ease of his lies, the casual way he'd betrayed her trust day after day. No, she said finally. You're not mine anymore, and I'm not yours. She walked to the table and tapped the divorce papers with her finger. I've already signed my part. The terms are generous, more than you deserve. You can keep the house. I'll be staying with Mia until I find my own place. You're leaving? Just like that? Nathan's voice rose, disbelief giving way to anger. After everything we've built together? You left long before I did, Eliza said quietly. You just kept coming home while your heart was elsewhere. She placed her empty glass on the counter and picked up her purse from the chair where it had been waiting. From inside, she removed her house key and placed it beside the whiskey glass. My lawyer will contact you next week to arrange the rest. I've already packed what I need. Nathan stared at her, his face a mixture of shock and desperation. Eliza, please, don't do this. We can work through this together. She paused at the doorway, looking back at him one last time. The man she'd loved. The man who had broken her heart. You know what hurts the most? She said softly. Not the affair itself. Not even the lying. It's that you must have thought so little of me, of my intelligence, of my intuition to believe I wouldn't notice, to think I would just accept whatever scraps of attention you had left after being with her. Nathan flinched, his eyes dropping to the floor. I deserve better than that, Eliza continued. I deserve someone who sees me clearly, who chooses me every day, not just when it's convenient. I do see you, he whispered. I do choose you. No, she said simply. You don't. You chose her. Now you have to live with that choice. With that, she turned and walked out of the kitchen, through the foyer, and out the front door of what had once been their home. The evening air was cool against her skin, autumn's first real chill settling over the neighborhood as porch lights flickered on along the street. Eliza didn't look back as she got into her car. She didn't cry as she pulled away from the curb. The tears would come later, she knew. For now, there was only the road ahead, unknown and terrifying, and somehow, despite everything, filled with a strange sense of freedom. 3 months later, the cafe bustled with the morning rush, the scent of espresso and freshly baked pastries filling the air. Eliza sat at a corner table, sketching idly in her notebook as she waited. architectural designs for a community center, her first solo project since joining a new firm last month. Is this seat taken? Eliza looked up to find Mia standing there, balancing 2 mugs of coffee and a paper bag. I brought reinforcements, Mia said, setting everything down and sliding into the chair across from Eliza. Almond croissants. Still warm? You're a lifesaver, Eliza smiled, closing her notebook. Sorry I'm late with the rent again, Mia waved her hand dismissively. Stop it. My guest room is yours for as long as you need it. Besides, you cook actual meals instead of surviving on takeout like I do. I'm getting the better end of this deal, Eliza laughed, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. The past 3 months had been a blur of lawyer meetings, paperwork, job interviews, and sleepless nights. But there had been good moments, too. Rediscovering old friendships, pursuing projects she'd put on hold, remembering who she was outside of her marriage. So, Mia said after a comfortable silence, today's the day, right? Eliza nodded. Divorce is final as of 9 a.m. this morning. My lawyer called to confirm. How do you feel? It was a question people kept asking, one Eliza never quite knew how to answer. How did she feel about the end of her marriage? About the betrayal that had led to it? About starting over at 34? Lighter, she said finally. Sad, but lighter. Mia reached across the table and squeezed her hand. That makes sense. Eliza's phone buzzed with a text notification. She glanced down, expecting it to be from her lawyer, but Nathan's name appeared on the screen instead. I signed the papers. It's done. I still think we made a mistake, but I respect your decision. I hope you find happiness, Eliza. You deserve it. She stared at the message, a complex mix of emotions washing over her. Closure, grief, validation, Nathan? Mia asked, noticing her expression. Eliza nodded, showing her the text. Still thinks it was a mistake, huh? Mia scoffed. Classic. It was a mistake, Eliza said quietly. Just not the one he thinks. Our mistake was losing sight of each other, of what mattered. His mistake was looking elsewhere instead of trying to fix what was broken between us. And yours? Eliza considered this, ignoring the signs, pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. She put her phone away without responding to Nathan's text. There was nothing left to say. Have you heard anything about her? Mia asked cautiously. Vanessa? Eliza shook her head. No, and I don't want to know. Whether they stayed together or not doesn't matter to me anymore. It was mostly true. There had been times, in the darkest hours of the night, when Eliza had wondered if Nathan and Vanessa were building a life from the ruins of her marriage. But those moments had grown less frequent, less painful with each passing week. Well, I have news, Mia said, changing the subject with obvious relief. Remember that apartment I told you about? The one in the converted warehouse downtown? It just became available, Eliza perked up. The one with the exposed brick and huge windows? The very same. And get this, the property manager is an old friend of mine. She's willing to waive the credit check since your divorce has messed with your score. All she needs is first and last month's rent by Friday. Mia, that's... Eliza's voice caught. That's amazing. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just invite me over for dinner once you're settled in. Mia grinned. And maybe introduce me to any cute neighbors you might discover. They laughed together. And Eliza felt a surge of gratitude for this friendship that had become her anchor in rough seas. As they finished their coffee and made plans to view the apartment that afternoon, Eliza's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification from her bank. The divorce settlement had been processed. The amount that appeared on her screen represented her share of their joint assets, a financial cushion to begin her new life. It was strange how something as cold and impersonal as a bank transaction could feel so significant, so final. The legal ties between her and Nathan were now completely severed. She was, in every sense, free. Outside the cafe, snow had begun to fall, delicate flakes drifting past the windows. Winter arriving in earnest, covering the city in a clean white blanket. Eliza watched the transformation for a moment, thinking about seasons, about endings and beginnings, about how life continued to move forward, even when you thought it might stop. Ready to go? Mia asked, gathering her things. Eliza nodded, closing her sketchbook and tucking it into her bag. As they stepped outside into the gentle snowfall, she tilted her face upward, feeling the cool kiss of snowflakes against her skin. For the first time in months, she didn't check her phone for Nathan's location. She didn't wonder where he was or who he was with. She didn't replay the scenes from the motel in her mind or question what she could have done differently. Instead, she thought about the apartment with the exposed brick walls, about the community center designs waiting to be completed, about the dinner she would cook for Mia next week. She thought about tomorrow and the day after, and all the days stretching out before her, days that belonged entirely to herself. As they walked through the snow-covered streets, arm in arm, Eliza realized something important. She had been a silent witness not just to her husband's betrayal, but to her own resilience, and in that witnessing, she had found her voice again. "You know what?" she said to Mia as they waited for the light to change at the corner. "I think I'm going to be okay." Mia smiled, squeezing her arm. "I know you are." The light turned green, and together they stepped forward into the falling snow, leaving footprints that would soon be covered, erased, made new again.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.